Remember when you got your first big screen TV? It made watching games about 1,000 times better. There's really no going back after that. Kind of like the first time we watched Hulu with tons of shows and movies, exclusive originals like The Handmaid's Tale, plus live TV for news and sports. Hulu will ruin TV for you forever. Start your free trial today at Hulu.com.
This is Christian Kirk with the Arizona Cardinals, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from pristineauction.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in. Yet another show. Here we are. Monday, Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Tuesday, February 12th. How dare you, Mike? You thought it was a Monday?
No, I was laughing at something completely unrelated to your buffoonery.
Okay. Are you going to enlighten us or just, you
No,
just wanted me to know?
No, it's not appropriate for this show.
All right, then. You got your Baker Mania shirt on. We're going to be talking about the rookies today on the show.
I may have timed that up.
That's just high production value. That's why you do what you do. Oh, wow.
Baker Mania.
Yeah, you got your Baker,
Catch it.
your
Mike
Baker
has
Mania
it.
shirt on. We have a rookie.
This is actually just because I really like bread.
Oh, you're into like the vocation of
Yes.
bread making.
Yes.
Now that's
They call that a baker.
Jason, you get
That's
mine?
something I can get behind
Yeah.
because pastries are one of my favorite things.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
They're actually
catch
like
the mania.
4 of my top favorite things.
Favorite?
things.
Welcome in.
That should be a
Welcome
new
in.
thing, like our top favorite things.
Yes, it could be.
It's like a top 5 list
Jason's
of the
top-
best.
Jason's favorites.
My favorites, 4 of my favorites are pastries.
You just sound like you have a really strange accent. It's my favorite.
My favorite pastries are so good. My favorites.
Brooks, how do you think that?
You slowly went from the Swedish chef right to Borat in a matter of 3 syllables.
He heard the word accent, and there was no other choice.
I'm a talented man.
I know how to do an accent. Brooks, everything going good for you over there?
Oh, it's going great, Andy.
Yeah, see, you're wearing an orange shirt as well. What is with this? We got 3 orange shirts on.
I'm a loser.
Yeah.
We know. Rookie review today. Quarterbacks and wide receivers. We'll be walking through some of the truth metrics that we brought up in the other positions, talking about this past year's rookies, what to expect from them in year number 2, and what historically rookies have been able to do in year 2 as well, especially at the quarterback position. Here's a quick question. It's an interesting one. It's a difficult one when you pose them like this, but what top-tier player is most likely to fall out of their respective tiers? So a big piece of the Ultimate Draft Kit, which, by the way, right now you can, up until March 1st, there's a big promotion going on, and we just released a good Get Bodied T-shirt.
Oh, we did.
So much requested Get Bodied shirt. Jason uses that phrase 30 times a day.
I do, and I
It's one of
ordered
his
my shirt
favorites.
today.
One of his favorite phrases.
Well, look, I must contest. How come Jason is the one associated with the phrase that I brought
I
to
know.
this show?
You certainly were
I
the
don't know why.
originator, but you know the phrase "you shine a turd." That's what I did, and I made it great.
I think he just called you a turd.
No, the get bodied.
It's a great phrase.
Yeah, because I shined it up.
So you can get that shirt, but you get $10 off of it as one of the pre-order bonuses for the Ultimate Draft Kit. We talk about tier-based drafting throughout the offseason as we head into your draft, looking at players in their respective tiers, making decisions based on that. And so this is a tough question because anybody right now that you would have projected to be a tier 1 running back, quarterback, wide receiver, whatever, you're not – yeah, they're projected there for a reason. That's the expectation. This question is which guy's most likely to potentially fall out, because what we do know is every year somebody does fall out of that tier.
Several people. Yeah, several people fall out. And the way that I took this, and you could take this a number of different ways, right? Is it how guys finished, where they were drafted, whether you think that they will drop out based on their ADP, or whether you think they won't produce where you're drafting them. Mine that I'm bringing to the table is Antonio Brown. He has been the number one in his tier by himself for several years now. And I think this is going to be the first year where he's not the first wide receiver taken off the board. I think that could happen even if he stays in Pittsburgh. Obviously, if he moves, he's going to fall a tier. If he goes anywhere else, whether it's the 49ers or any situation that you think would be as good as he could land in, I think you're going to see guys like Hopkins and Tyreek and Devontae Adams, maybe Julio, Odell, go ahead of Antonio Brown. So I see him as one of the most likely to fall out of where he has been living for the last several seasons.
I'm going to stay on the same team as of today and go with James Conner. Now, when we were asked to put out our initial top 10, probably about a month and a half ago, Jason and I put him out there. Conner wasn't in my top 10.
He was in mine.
He was, and he's in a lot of them. And by ADP, he is as well for a lot of people. James Conner is the player that I think could it could get very interesting for him when he went from no longer the day after day filling in for Lev Bell role, dominating performance. First 7 games of the year was averaging 290 carries, 1,300-plus yards, 21 rushing touchdowns. That's what his average was.
His pace.
His projection, his pace through the first 7 games that he played last year when he didn't know if Lev Bell was coming back at any given moment. Now, if Antonio Brown leaves, this team has had a little bit of tumult, and he's been given the keys to this offense. Now, I think he's a very talented player, but the expectations of him being a top 5 guy, I don't believe in them. And over the last 6 games last year, his pace, 235 carries, 997 yards, 8 touchdowns. These aren't embarrassing numbers. His receiving totals went down pretty significantly in terms of targets and receiving yard pace in that span. The first half of the season, averaging a pace of 738 receiving yards, second half 460. So that's just what I mean. When I say James Conner might not be tier 1, I mean he'll be tier 2. That's what I think, but not worthy of that high of a pick.
I took this question is so ridiculously hard right now. I don't know why we're asking this today.
Because it's fun. Mike.
We ask the tough questions here,
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, like should Jason wear a fedora?
Speaking of that,
Oh, man. Fedora watch
if you
2019.
if you participated in the petition,
Yeah, you're talking about the Move On petition?
look,
That has 354 signatures?
there was a movement
Yeah.
on social media. It swept the nation.
It was disgusting.
It demanded that Jason wear a fedora for an entire week for the show. Overwhelming success. This is what the people wanted.
We need to explore all our options with what's atop his head.
So we're making this happen.
The fedora's on the way.
I can
It
promise
may
you
be
this.
delivered during the show.
Listen, Foot Clan, I can promise you this. If I wear a fedora for a week, it will then go in the garbage. I will not. This is not something I'm trying to like. I'm just
telling me-
hoping it sticks, and then this will be my new look. No, ridiculous. I will not be a fedora man.
You're going to be for a week.
You're going to wear it for that week.
Fedora man.
And then some of your favorite players are going to reach out on Twitter and just say, dude, I love this guy with the fedora.
Well, then I'll keep it, of course.
I love this dude.
If
Is he the lead singer?
if Juju
Is that the
comes out,
Smash Mouth lead singer?
if Juju comes out and says, "Hey,
That
Jay,
dude's walking on the sun.
you look great in this fedora," then I'll stick with it.
So we've got a couple of Steelers.
All right,
Mike,
Foot Clan,
Mike, you took a different route.
You know what we have to do.
Oh,
You're
no.
staying on the fedora?
We have to get Juju to compliment Jason's fedora. Yeah, I mean,
That's all there is to it.
I went.
He would never take it off at that point.
Block Juju on Twitter. Got it. Okay, so who was your player?
I took
Mike?
the easy route out because Matt Ryan was the number 2 quarterback of 2018, and I just don't see him finishing at number 2 or number 1. I think he will fall probably 2 tiers.
He won't. Yeah, and I agree with that. None of what you're saying is wrong. But he won't be drafted as a tier 1.
Correct.
He won't be drafted as the number 2 quarterback off the board.
No, he will not.
no. Matt Ryan, despite having a great season, will be in the 10th round again. I mean, he might end up being actually a solid pick because, I mean, who's going to take him over Drew Brees? Next year or
Right. And so like the The answer to the hard question is, to me, it still depends on what the New Orleans Saints do in free agency. But the clearest teardrop to me would be Alvin Kamara.
Okay.
Of the top 5 guys last year.
Even if Ingram leaves?
No, that's what I'm saying. If Ingram leaves, then there's no way I'm talking about that because of the way that Kamara started last year to the way that he finished, which the entire argument
Surprised you didn't say Adam Thielen.
I think he –
Based on how hard you hit his second half.
Yeah, well, I think that Adam Thielen fell out of that top tier for people during that second half. I do. I mean, he finished, wide receiver 7?
Yeah, he's not going to be drafted as a top-tier guy.
Yeah.
Like I said, come draft season, Stephon Diggs will wrongly be drafted ahead of him.
All right, don't forget, follow us over on Twitter at the FF Ballers. You can follow Jason at JasonFFL. Follow Mike at FF Hitman. You can follow me at Andy Holloway. And the website's thefantasyfootballers.com, youtube.com/thefantasyfootballers, and ad-free. You can listen over on Stitcher Premium. We're also on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe, review over there, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, everywhere that you listen to podcasts. And I've told you all about the Get Bodied shirt, so let's move on to the news.
News and notes from around the league, presented by Sleeper.
There was a very significant sleeper alert coming across the wire.
Yes, there was.
This morning. So let's talk about that first. I think it's what fantasy owners will be most intrigued about, and that is the fact that the Cleveland Browns, in the middle of a lunch that we were just having, they signed Kareem Hunt, former running back of the Kansas City Chiefs, cut last year towards the end of the season. Obviously one of the biggest names in fantasy football up until that point. And here is Jack Dorsey, GM.
John.
What did I say?
Jack. John Dorsey.
Look, we've talked John and Jack. They for some reason these guys get to replace their names at will if they want.
They can do whatever they want.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, John Dorsey was the GM of the Kansas City Chiefs when they drafted Kareem Hunt.
And he talked him like part of the reason for Kareem Hunt when the draft season was happening in that rookie period. Why I liked Kareem Hunt was because Dorsey was so madly in love with Kareem Hunt and his ability. I mean, they traded up significantly to get Kareem Hunt in the, I believe, 3rd round it was. So it was shocking to see the Cleveland Browns have picked up Kareem Hunt. You thought, well, they don't need him. They got Nick Chubb, they got Duke Johnson. But then when you start thinking through it, connecting Dorsey to Kareem Hunt, then it absolutely made sense.
And you can see a backfield of the future here that is reminiscent of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, where you've got the great pass catching back in Alvin Kamara and in Kareem Hunt, and then you have Chubb, who's just a great bruiser, a la Ingram, but they can all do everything on the field. The thing that I think a lot of people are concerned about, as soon as the news broke, Twitter, my timeline was full of, you got to move Chubb down.
Right.
And I think that's going to be a mistake in 2019 as far as people will move him down because they're worried. And by the time drafts come, we'll know what Kareem Hunt's fate will be. But I expect Kareem Hunt to be suspended for the majority of this upcoming season.
Agreed.
And if, let's say he's gone 8 games, so half. If he's gone 8 games and you can get Chubb at a discount for the first half of the year as a star, I'm doing that because halfway through the season, which is more than halfway through the fantasy football regular season, if I've got a star running back, I'm going to be able to figure things out by week 9, make some moves.
One of the things that happens a lot of the time in fantasy football is we want the clear path to glory. And that clear path that was present for Nick Chubb to win you your league next year, it's not as clear anymore. Now, a source told ESPN's Dan Graziano that the discipline process is still ongoing, nowhere near done for Kareem Hunt. Like you said, he's going to get a significant suspension for shoving and kicking a young woman in Cleveland last year. It could be anywhere from probably 6 to 10 games. That's probably, I would put it at about 90% chance it's in that range.
8 to 10 is the range I'm expecting.
I'll say 6 to 12.
But the thing is if Cleveland remains a team ascending, They have great pieces. Baker was wonderful. Opportunity in that division potentially. If they're having great success, there's no world where Kareem Hunt just walks in the door in week 10 or week 11 and takes over the backfield from a successful Nick Chubb. So I think a lot of your confidence in Nick Chubb can remain there if it was confidence in his talent.
Sure, and for Kareem Hunt, it's a 1-year deal. He is a restricted free agent afterwards, so if Cleveland likes where things are trending, if Kareem has been able to atone and kind of get his life turned around, then they will have first crack to bring him back. But it's as far as an NFL contract, this is a very, very low risk for Cleveland.
All right, the other huge news for fantasy football owners, NFL draft watchers, Kyler Murray, Oklahoma Sooner, Heisman Trophy winner, Oakland A's draft pick.
Oh, whoops.
Has declared his passion and love and dedication to the game of football and will be entering the NFL draft.
Yeah, when we heard this morning, Mike, you said, "Oh, Kyler Murray says he's dedicated to football," and Andy and I both had the same reaction. It was like, okay, what's the source? Like,
who said that?
Who's saying this? Okay, he's dedicated, and it's like, no, this is Kyler Murray's Twitter page.
He is the source.
Who made a graphic saying this? I am fully 100% dedicated to football, to being an NFL quarterback. That's what I'm doing with my career, which is what he had to do if he wants to be in the top 15 picks of the NFL draft.
He forfeited $3.16 million that was due to him March 1st from the A's and has to pay back $1.29 million of the $1.5 million signing bonus. At that point, they retain his rights.
Wait, he has to pay back 1.29 of
1.51. Yeah.
That sounds like a good deal for Kyler.
Yeah. So that where he ends up, I don't know, but his makeup, his ability, what he did in college, we know he's small. We'll talk so much about the rookies coming out.
Where do you want him to end up, Andy?
I may or may not have tagged Cliff Kingsbury right after this. You guys know I'm not the biggest Josh Rosen fan, and I know we'll talk about him on the show today as well, and I'll tell you why. But at the end of the day, Kyler Murray has a good chance of being a high-impact fantasy player because of his dual-threat ability, and there'll be other players in that category. But very interesting news, a couple big pieces of news today, and be sure that you grab the Sleeper app where you not only get news, but you can switch your Dynasty League over there to Sleeper. You can download it today. Sponsors of the news and notes. You guys ready to talk a little rookie review?
Yes.
Rookie review.
That's very nice.
Concise. Right to the point, Mike.
Yep.
All right. This is a very interesting, as we dive into fantasy rookie quarterback production and what they're capable of doing. This was a very interesting stat to me. The question being, can rookie quarterbacks sustain wide receiver production? Okay. So since 2004, so that's a big run, right? You've got a ton of years there. Rookie quarterbacks who play in 10-plus games, they've sustained a top 12 wide receiver just 16% of the time. They've sustained a top 24 wideout 22% of the time. They've sustained a top 36 wideout 32% of the time. What is the takeaway when you read that? Well, I mean, we just talked about Kyler Murray, and there'll be other rookie quarterbacks getting a shot this year.
Yeah, well, you take a look at the wide receivers that they had this year and see if they buck the trend, if they keep the trend. I mean, they're obviously part of the trend. Josh Rosen single-handedly has tried to bring that down as far as possible.
Jarvis Landry finished at wide receiver 18.
Exactly.
For Baker Mayfield, right?
A wide receiver 2.
I would say, we got a chicken and egg situation as well, because if there is a rookie quarterback starting 10-plus games for a team, that team's probably not very good to start with.
But it does help us when we look at play. I mean, I think this past year, you wanted to see Quincy Enunwa, Robbie Anderson, and what Sam Darnold had to work with there as he learned the ropes. Baker Mayfield, it took him a while. He broke records, still couldn't sustain a top 12 wide receiver. So we may have high expectations for the fit, where these players are drafted, but you got to bear in mind you will be bucking the trend if somebody walks into Washington, okay, and takes over the quarterback position in year one and you end up with a wide receiver 1.
Well, to be fair, that would be bucking the trend for all wide receivers
In Washington.
from Washington.
Yeah, well, and like you said, a bit of a chicken or egg thing. But let's start with Baker. Obviously, the first overall pick in the draft. We did not talk about him in the Quarterback Truth episodes. He finished at QB 16.
19. Or yes, you're right. Yes, 16, 19 in consistency.
Yeah, 19 was his consistency rank. Passed for 27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Always difficult to evaluate rookies because there's a learning curve, a portion of the season where they are either, for him, he had a different offensive coordinator, a different head coach. He busted half the time when he played. He was good 50% of the time, and then he was great just 14% of the time. But the sky's the limit for Baker and what he has the ability to do. Do we expect him to get there as soon as next year?
Yeah, I really, really do. I think that what the Browns have done offensively, I mean, look, they're bringing in Kareem Hunt. They're not standing pat. They took the offensive coordinator, promoted him to the head coach because they said, look, this is going to be an offense. This is going to be an offensive-led team. And when you have the rookie first pick in the draft who comes in and breaks the NFL record for rookie passing touchdowns, and he did it without starting until week 4, you've got something special on your hands. And so going forward into next year, I will, depending on where Baker's ADP will be, I don't think he can possibly leap most of the guys that go in the single digits because there's not that many quarterbacks that get drafted in the single digits anymore. The late round quarterback thing is more and more common in all of your home leagues. And so there's going to be 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks drafted in those single digit rounds. I don't see Baker jumping ahead of them this season on draft price. But I could see Baker finishing I think sky's the limit. If you told me that Baker's a top 5 quarterback next year, I could see that. I think he has the potential. That's the type of guy I want to draft. I want to draft a guy in the double-digit rounds who's like, maybe he doesn't take that leap yet, but he has the potential, the team, the offense, the coaching staff to really take over.
Baker will be top 12 next year.
I agree with that, but he'll be drafted in the top 12 as well.
Yeah, I'm not as bullish as you, Jay. I don't see top 5 as a potential outcome for Baker Mayfield next year. I don't disagree with you, Mike. I think 10, 11, 12, that's about where I'd have him. I'd still take a guy like Matt Ryan ahead of Baker Mayfield. Last year, 3rd most passing yards per game ever by a rookie. And it's great. It's great that he's breaking all these records for rookies, but they're still not putting him in the category of the upper echelon passers yet. And you saw that up and down games throughout the season. Didn't have a game where he broke 30 fantasy points. Great player. Didn't really see a difference when he played top or bottom defenses. Didn't see a difference at home on the road. But I think as it is with many of these guys, you have to leapfrog a Matt Ryan. You're going to have to leapfrog a Cam Newton. Do you draft him ahead of a Matthew Stafford? Probably.
Yeah, 100%.
Because the ceiling is so much better for Baker.
Yeah, the harder guys will be Dak, Phillip Rivers, Kirk Cousins. Who would you be taking, Baker over those guys?
I would take all 3 of those over Baker, I think.
And I think I would take Baker over all 3 of those.
Whoa.
Maybe not Kirk.
Hey now.
Yeah.
Maybe not Kirk? So Kirk would be the one that you might consider putting ahead of him?
I feel like Kirk is falling because of the head coach or the offensive coordinator changes.
Mike, can you take your shirt off?
I could.
I think Jason needs the Baker.
Oh, you need the Baker.
Shirt.
Oh.
I mean, where are you with
those?
those?
You wanted some hot peck action.
No, nobody needs those pepperonis.
It's not a Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh, goodness. You got the tats to support that, Mike. Now, where are you with Baker?
Got the tats and the flaps.
The tats and the flaps. That's Mike. Those 3 names. Break it down for me, Baker Mania.
Of those, man, that will be a
Brooks
really
is making
tough.
a little show highlight note. Tats and flaps.
That'll be a really, really tough one because of just trying to project the ceiling for Baker as opposed to those other players. I think Baker would. Let's see. I would take Cousins over him. I would take Baker over Phillip Rivers just because of going for absolute ceiling, and Dak is going to be. I have to evaluate Dak more before I can make that call.
I'm worried that we'll confuse on-the-field success with fantasy success for Baker because he's going to be a very good NFL quarterback. But I still think a lot of this offense is going to be predicated on the success of Nick Chubb. They just made another investment into the running game. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the reason I'm willing to take the leap is because let's say he turns into Hall of Fame caliber, he was drafted as the number 1 pick. If he takes that leap, I want to be in before the draft price also takes that leap. Because I'm fine pivoting off. He's not that great. Great. I'll stream the position. I stream the position most years. But I want to get in before everyone
else. That's what you call a low-cost opinion. If you,
it was Pat Mahomes this last year.
I mean, yeah, if you believe that, the cost of believing that is nothing. I mean, if you're all in on Baker, you don't pay the price. I mean, you're going to pay a 10th round pick for him.
Is that doing a low cost opinion draft pick? That's one of my that's one of my favorite strategies.
One of your favorites, yeah. By the way, we'll talk about Sam Darnold here. I did want to pause for a second because I forgot to remind the listeners out there. If you are hungry for more episodes of the three of us,
I'm famished,
which is just very unlikely, but if you would like an extra show that entertains, and that's all it does, there's really nothing else, you should check out the Spitballers podcast because we drop a Spitballers podcast episode every Monday.
Yep.
It is replete with dad jokes, nonsense, bad jokes. All of the in-between moments, tats and flaps, all sorts of things.
Just chatting life.
Every Monday, it's an hour. It's a fun drive to work to brighten your Monday up. So we encourage you, obviously free. It's a podcast. You just go subscribe, listen in, catch up on some old episodes.
Become a spitwad.
Learn a little bit about the three of us.
Yep.
Whether you want to or not. All right. The next rookie to review here, Sam Darnold. 3rd pick of the draft. New York Jet quarterback. Busted a sweet 69% of the time. Good 31% of the time. Great 8% of the time.
None of those numbers are good if you're wondering.
No. And his overall finish was 27th. So consistency at the bottom of the league.
The one nice thing was that his best 2 games of the year were 2 of the last 3 games. You started to see some flashes. That's what you want out of a rookie. Not when you're comparing Darnold to Baker, he's not as good. But Baker had one of the best rookie, NFL quarterback seasons of all time. And so, yeah, Darnold was not that great, but he did have the games where he showed you the flashes.
Over the last 4 games, 6 touchdowns, only 1 interception. 66, 63, 68% completion percentage, and had the big game against Green Bay, 341 and 3. That's what you're talking about flashing. That's the kind of thing that we did not see from a Josh Rosen. Robbie Anderson.
Can we do like a he who shall not be named
for Josh Rosen?
Needs a whole Voldemort. I don't even mind.
I think look, I'm getting a lot of hate right now on Twitter for not liking Josh Rosen as a potential bounce back candidate. Because most people that I've talked to, especially Cardinal fans, they understand that he had no offensive line, no running game, no wide receivers. I understand that too, people. But you would have wanted to see 1 or 2 games that looked like one of these Darnold games.
Yeah.
Games where he made a play or two that made you say, oh, he can overcome a bad offensive line on this play. He can overcome a bad wide receiver on this play. I didn't see that, and we'll talk more about him momentarily, but for Darnold, you saw that. Now, Robbie Anderson, he finished as wide receiver 35 with Darnold. Enunwa got hurt. He was not way up there. But you saw some rapport with Chris Herndon. He was a better player against bottom 16 defenses. And it seemed to me, my eye test, you guys confirm or deny this, and it fits with that statistic, when he was up against it, when he was facing a top defense, when he was put pressure on it, he was committing turnovers.
Crumpled.
Which is the problem he had in college.
Crumple-Stiltskin?
Yeah.
Remember Algie Crumpler, the tight end?
I completely agree with you, Andy. He didn't step up in the difficult situations. He took advantage of the easier situations. But that's a rookie. This is a guy that what I talked about with Baker, taking that risk and using my draft capital in a draft before it happens. I didn't see enough, with Darnold, or maybe not so much with Darnold, but with the situation, the Jets, the offense, everything there. I'm not taking that leap and drafting him before it happens. With Darnold, I'm going to wait until he becomes, a Matthew Stafford-esque producer in the NFL, and then I'll take him in years future.
Mike, any thoughts on Darney?
Completely agree.
All right.
Darnold Schwarzenegger?
Yes.
Darnold.
Let's move on to Josh Allen.
Get to the end zone.
Oh!
Get to the end zone.
Get to the end zone.
Josh Allen, 7th pick in the draft.
He's going to be so fun
To talk about?
Yeah, just the off season, watching what happens to his ADP.
Listen, the aforementioned 2 quarterbacks, Baker, great games. So that means what? Top 3 finish on the week?
Yeah.
14% of the time. Sam Darnold, 8%. That would be 1 time. Josh Allen, 36% of his games were top 3 finishes. And because he's a rookie, and you can kind of throw out, I mean, maybe you guys don't, but I throw out everything up until week 12, till we got to see him do what he was doing. From week 12 on,
do you know what?
He was great.
Do you remember what quarterback rank he was week 12 on?
I'm going to guess, based on the numbers, 6 solid games or pretty solid games, I'm going to guess QB4.
QB4 is a good guess. Mike, do you remember?
Yes, I do.
It is QB1.
All right. That's decent.
That's pretty good.
So you look at a guy like Josh Allen and the rushing yardage, which, by the way, was the 2nd most rushing yards per game by a rookie in history. All of the rushing
At the quarterback position.
All the rushing totals, it washes out inconsistencies elsewhere that every rookie quarterback has. So if he ascends as a passer, it seems like gravy for Josh Allen owners.
Right.
Yeah, when you've got the body and the athleticism that Josh Allen has, when you look at fantasy football in the quarterback position, it's very Cam Newton-esque. I mean, we made fun of Cam Newton's accuracy for years on this show when he was not a great quarterback. We joke about, when he went down and a backup would come in, that they finally have, a better quarterback. But for fantasy football, with the way that they score rushing and with the big body to be able to keep doing that, we'll talk about Lamar Jackson as well in a minute, but I think Josh Allen could sustain rushing numbers like that, just like Cam has done for a long time. And so, yeah, for fantasy purposes, Josh Allen's another guy I'll definitely be willing to draft late in my draft. I want a shot at one of those Baker or Josh Allen upside-type picks.
Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield, I take Josh Allen going away next year.
For fantasy.
Next year.
Yeah, I lean that way as well.
8 fumbles. That was one of the 89 attempts, 631 yards on the ground. He's an example of, look, he didn't have a wide receiving core.
No.
At all. I mean, Robert Foster, Zay Jones, Isaiah McKenzie.
He had to deal with Kelvin Benjamin for half of it.
And injuries to LaShawn McCoy throughout. And he flashed. He gave you games of elite production, and he led the team to competitive games. I'm not trying to say that Josh Allen's the greatest quarterback ever, but for fantasy purposes, he did some very special things over the last 6 weeks of the season.
I said, it's going to be very fun to watch what happens.
Where's his ADP going to be?
I have no idea. I cannot get a feel for how the general public is going to proceed with Josh Allen.
You have to imagine that, because it's impossible to go the other direction, you have to imagine they add pieces.
Yes.
That the way the offense, the optics of his receiving weapons has to be better after this offseason than what he's had.
As well as the offensive line. Remember, they lost 3 players right before the season. Right. One retired, one was injured, one was earlier. But, yeah, I mean, I agree. The situation around him will be better. So, but, man, I just can't see these guys, the general consensus, the average drafter really taking a shot on these guys when there's, Jimmy Garoppolo back and in San Francisco and,
I'll take Josh Allen with my last pick.
I'll take Josh Allen as well, but I think he'll be
But
there
will
late.
you be able to?
I don't know.
That's the question.
Yes, because I don't see anybody taking Tom. They're going to take Tom Brady over Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins.
They're going to take Big Ben over Josh Allen. Right?
I would take Ben over him, yeah.
They're going to take Matt Ryan over Josh Allen.
Yep.
I would take Matt Ryan.
So we're going to get through enough names where they're all loaded up on quarterbacks.
They're going to take Jared Goff. They're going to take,
So he's interesting. You're right,
yes.
Mike. Yeah, getting back to your main point, interesting. All right, Josh Rosen.
Less interesting.
Lamar Jackson, the last two quarterbacks I want to talk about here before we move on to wide receiver rookie review. Rosen was bad.
Putrid.
He was a bust by fantasy category standards in 93% of his games. He was only classified as good, which is a top 12 finish once.
Just one game where he was all right. It's good.
Most pick sixes.
Look, fantasy is not everything.
No.
I get it. A quarterback can be good in real life and put up bad fantasy numbers, but woof.
Yeah, but the
Buzz, your girlfriend.
The most pick sixes.
Buzz your girlfriend.
The most pick sixes and the lowest yards per attempt for any quarterback with at least 9 games played. Yeah, that's bad for both fantasy and real life. There's a reason the Arizona Cardinals get to pick number 1 this year. It was not good.
The Bradford-Rosen combo averaged 13.3 fantasy points per game. The Cardinals never had a top 12 performance at the quarterback position. This was on par with the Nick Foles, Case Keenum, Jeff Fisher-led Rams.
Oh, don't say that.
From 2015. Larry Fitzgerald, the best finishing wideout for the Cardinals, 26th. And no, I mean, here's the thing. Most Cardinal fans, and I'm a Cardinal fan in case you're curious, they write me and they say, how could you expect anybody to do better? I couldn't. But this was next level bad. And like I said, no flashes of success. And I don't believe in the sunk cost fallacy in terms of quarterbacks in the NFL. We've seen enough Christian Hackenbergs, EJ Manuels, Ryan Tannehills, whatever the case may be.
A swing and a miss.
If you miss, you miss. So look, I can be wrong, and I'd love to be wrong. They're my hometown team. I think the Cardinals need to move on. They need to move Josh Rosen to a team like the Giants, to Washington for a second or third round pick. And if I were them, I would draft another quarterback. That's just where I'm at.
Hey, Dolphins, come get your guy. Come get you some Rosen.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I have there's
nothing to add here.
I have nothing to comment.
Lamar Jackson's more interesting.
I would give him at least one more year, though.
Yeah, look, you bring in Cliff Kingsbury, you change the offensive system, you draft a couple pieces. Could Josh Rosen, who I actually really liked, I liked this college tape. He was my number 2 quarterback on my board going into last year's draft. I was so excited when the Cardinals drafted him. There are ways in which he can rebound. But
no doubt.
There were some things you saw on the field, namely his accuracy, which he was very accurate in college, and then in the NFL is just airmailing or putting balls at people's feet. I mean, it was just bad.
All right, Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, 14% great games, 43% good games, never busted in any of his starts. Never fit that bust category. So he was a top 12 guy.
Well, you got a quarterback and a running back every time he suited up.
You got a running back and a quarterback every time he suited up.
Yes, in one position. It was very, very nice.
So where do we look at him for next year? This is his team. He fumbled the ball a ton. He wasn't able to carry on the momentum that John Brown had from the beginning half of the year with Joe Flacco. John Brown ended up at wide receiver 42. I assume if you own a wide receiver on Baltimore, you run for the hills at this point until we see more from Lamar Jackson.
Just a comment real quick on the wide receivers. I like to get a snapshot of like how efficient was a player. Did they way overproduce with their opportunity? But the 3 main wide receivers for the Baltimore Ravens, Michael Crabtree, John Brown, and Willie Snead, their finish at the amount of targets they get compared to their finish of total fantasy points, it's not just bad. It is horrifying to look at how far below their targets they actually finished. It is absolutely insane. I mean, we'll talk about that stat. Like I like to call it meat on the bone. Did they underproduce? But it's just hilarious.
It's outlandish.
It's hilarious to see. Oh, well, there's the Ravens wide receivers all together. So yeah, I completely agree. If you have a Baltimore Raven wide receiver on your dynasty team, you better. I have no advice.
Yeah,
I have no advice to give you.
Just don't draft him. If you're in a dynasty league, then you hope that it's John Brown. He's a free agent. He'll sign somewhere else. You're not going to be starting those wide receivers. Hopefully, someone like Mark Andrews at tight end can step up. Lamar Jackson will be drafted ahead of Baker and ahead of Josh Allen.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you prefer Lamar Jackson over both those guys?
No, I would prefer. I would definitely prefer Josh Allen as the first of those three because I believe that the rushing numbers will be great for him and Lamar Jackson, but I believe Josh Allen can stick with it through the year. I just can't imagine if they continue to run Lamar Jackson how they did in the few games that he got to start that he could play 16.
Well, he'll be working on throwing the football this offseason. We'll see what he gets accomplished by that measure because he's going to need to be able to throw the football.
Yeah.
DJ Moore at the wide receiver position, 24th pick in the draft, 16 games, 55 receptions, 788 yards, 2 touchdowns on 82 targets, less than 50% of the snaps through the first 7 games. But in the last 7 weeks, 85% of the snaps. So he earned his way onto the field.
Well, his entire season, we know that rookie wide receivers, it generally takes till the second half of the season before you start seeing anything really come together for these guys. Everything for DJ Moore's season is weeks 11 through 14. He was the wide receiver 10 in that span. And after that, Cam Newton, his quarterback, couldn't, by his own admission, could not even throw the ball 30 yards. So that's where I'm looking. I'm looking at that tiny snapshot. I know that's a really small sample to see a rookie wide receiver produce, but the first guy taken in the draft, the Panthers could have taken literally any wide receiver they wanted. They wanted DJ Moore. I think very big things are coming for DJ Moore next year, assuming that Cam Newton's shoulder is right by training camp.
He showed a lot on the field, and he's a freak athlete. The combine was off the charts, and when you've got a guy that's used how he was being used, I believe he had the second most rookie wide receiving rushing yards in a season. That's nice. You get that baseline of touches for a guy. I agree that DJ Moore is someone to target next year because he has the opportunity to really take over the number one role on the team.
He's the most well-rounded receiver they have, and he's the one that has the most big play potential. So I agree with you guys.
Devin Funchess is an unrestricted free agent, so that'll be one less mouth to feed there.
Right.
And Cam Newton is looking good in recovery. So, I mean, there's an opportunity there for more.
Hoping.
Calvin Ridley, the 26th pick in the draft by the Falcons. He finished at 20th overall. His consistency rank, however, was 39th because he had some big boy games. We talked about him in the wide receiver truth episode, so you've heard about him. The cap that he has, his name is Julio Jones, right?
Yep.
There's a limit to the capability there, and if you took out his week 3 37-point game, it really wasn't it was a pretty rocky road for Calvin Ridley. But as a rookie, finishing at number 20, never playing more than 74% of the snaps, he played his part. But what do we expect from Ridley next year? What's his real ceiling with Julio?
You know, it's funny because a lot of times with rookie wide receivers, you just mentioned this, Mike, and it really is true. The second half of the year is so much better for rookie wide receivers than the first half of the year. But it wasn't the case with Calvin Ridley because he had those 2 monster games really early in the season. And if you look at from week 5 on, he was actually the wide receiver 34 behind guys like Zay Jones and DJ Moore and those players. I think his upside is limited because he'll never be the number one for this offense, at least not for the next, 3 or 4 years while Julio is there. And it's going to be, I think, a lot of it's going to be touchdown dependent. Can he go? So I don't see him as the wide receiver 20. The monster weeks he had, I see him much more as a wide receiver 30 or wide receiver 34, what he did for the majority of the season. Can he go up from that? Yes. But I don't think he's going to be a consistent wide receiver. I think he's going to be a frustrating guy that you don't – he's not the lead target. He's not the first read, and when you're drafting him, if he gets a bump up because that year 2, wide receiver, then I'm going to be hesitant to draft him.
Mohamed Sanu is 29 years old. He's under contract for the next 2 full seasons. Doesn't mean he'll be there for those 2, but this year, Mohamed Sanu outsnapped him. So until Sanu give something up.
Yeah,
Not to say the snap counts don't go up for Ridley, but it seems like there is a world where he's going to be developing behind these guys for another year.
He just overperformed so much in the touchdown category. He caught a touchdown every 9.2 targets, right? That's insane when you're looking at guys like Michael Thomas, 16.3. His teammate Julio Jones, every 21 targets, Julio scored a touchdown. To be in that range where you're catching a touchdown for fewer than 10 targets, you're in Tyler Lockett range. You're in Mike Williams range, where it's not a sustainable thing for your fantasy production.
Yeah, this could be the last year for Sanu. You could be looking 2 years down the line. But Courtland Sutton, 8th pick of the second round by the Broncos, 16 games played, 704 yards, 4 touchdowns. He played at least 69% of the snaps in weeks 12 through 16. This was after.
Sorry, that's 12 out of 16 weeks.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, Brooks. In 12 out of 16 weeks, so even before Demaryius and Emmanuel Sanders had their departures. But overall, I think he was a disappointment by our standards.
I'm going to classify Courtland Sutton's season as disappointing.
And as of right now, there's not like I feel like the same arguments we made for him to have a nice finish to the season, which he didn't.
No,
he
not
really
at all.
didn't. They're all the same arguments right now. I mean,
Right.
he's the guy, but he was the guy then. And Case Keenum, well, he's the guy, and he's probably going to be the guy again. Even if they draft a quarterback, Keenum is expensive. And the likelihood that he's a transition quarterback, now Elway's come out and said Case Keenum, he's not the answer, which always feels good. But Case Keenum was bad, and that translated to lack of opportunities for a player that we deem as talented. Now I'm going to make him prove it. He's going to have to go out there and do it. It can't be a flash play here and a drop there. It has to be a consistent week-to-week thing if he's going to have any value in fantasy. So I see the upside. I wouldn't be surprised if, this team focused on the defense and running the football the way that they found success towards the end of last year before they were eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, you have Phillip Lindsay and you have Royce Freeman and you have Bradley Chubb and Von Miller. So Keenum is not going to be him airing it out is not going to be the solution.
No, I agree. I mean, Sutton is going to be one of those what does he cost type of players, because I do not believe, if I had to bet, will he turn that corner and be the superstar next year that he was drafted to be, that he has the opportunity as the clear-cut number one on that team to be, I would bet against it. Because just like you said, Andy, he had all those things at the end of last season. Nothing's going to change really dramatically for him over that, other than, he gets another year in the system and that year two leap. So I'm willing to take the shot because I think he's got the talent for it. He was great in college, and he showed flashes. So if he's cheap, if he is in double-digit rounds, then I'll take a shot. I'd rather take a shot on him than other guys that are like, ho-hum, I know what I've got, which is a wide receiver 3 at the draft. But if come draft season he's starting to be seen as he's the number one for a team and he's drafted to be one of the last number one wide receivers, but still in that 7th, 8th, 9th round, I'm probably going to pass. I'm going to bet against him.
It's all up to what happens with Manny Sanders over this offseason. How does his recovery go? Does the team cut him because they're going to have to give him a ton of money if he plays with the Broncos next year, but they can get out from underneath the contract for pretty little at the dead cap? And then if he has that whole offseason and the training camp where he's the number one and they're building the team around him already, then I'm going to be far more interested in Sutton.
I would be shocked if they keep Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, I will be too. If you had to pick right now, would you rather have Robbie Anderson or Courtland Sutton for next year?
For next year? Ooh.
Those guys are going in similarly
That's
in drafts
a great
right
pick.
now.
I think I would go Robbie Anderson. We've just seen him be successful on the field 2 years in a row, and
had a stretch of games as a number one this past
I lean
year.
that way as well.
All right, Dante Pettis and Christian Kirk. 2 more rookies to talk about here. Jason, you're on record in love with Dante Pettis. I think his jersey arrived today.
Yes, it did.
Second-round pick by the 49ers, 467 yards, 5 touchdowns last year with the injuries. Christian Kirk also got injured. Both these guys injured in their rookie seasons, missed a decent amount of games.
You can't ask Pettis to have done more given his opportunity. He took advantage of it. As soon as he was more and more involved, the injuries happened, and late in the season, he was the wide receiver 5 from weeks 12 through 15, and now he goes into that year 2 leap. He gets a massive quarterback upgrade in the sense that the starting quarterback comes back. And could those things change and now he's not targeted the same? Sure. But I would always prefer a quarterback upgrade than not having a quarterback upgrade. So I really like Pettis. I hope he doesn't, rise too much in the draft, because he's not someone I'm willing to plant a flag in and say,
hope not.
No matter
That'll
what,
hurt.
I know he's going
Ow.
to be great. But his talent is there. He showed it. He beat NFL corners on the ridge.
That's why he missed week 17. Jason stuck a flag in him.
Sorry, Dante. That was my bad.
Christian Kirk, Mike, weigh in on Christian Kirk and what's his potential? I mean, in a lot of ways, when you look at what he did last year, 68 targets, 43 receptions.
Well, he was
the best-looking receiver on the field.
He had the best connection with Rosen, so that's the silver lining that you can take away from the season. But there's not a lot to be excited about heading into the season with Christian Kirk.
The talent is there.
Yeah, I love the player.
The talent was there, and the hope now is that Cliff Kingsbury comes in and gets rid of what looked like the Rams offense from a couple of years ago, just the blandest, most boring, outdated offense in the world, and they utilize the talent that Christian Kirk has. And I could see him being a regular producer for fantasy, but I don't think he's got the skill set to be a 1 or the ceiling to have a 1. Not just next year, but I think 4 or 5 years down the road. I really like Christian Kirk. I just don't see him as a fantasy number 1 for your team.
Anthony Miller, another intriguing rookie last year with the Bears. He had a couple of games, mostly touchdown-dependent games, where he had a touchdown every 4.7 catches. Is that true?
Yeah.
7 touchdowns on 33 catches, yeah.
How I highlighted Calvin Ridley, I was waiting for this to come up, but Anthony Miller had 7 touchdowns. Every 7.7 targets was scoring a touchdown. I mean, that's not possible.
It's not possible, but you also like the fact that they put him in a position to do that.
Yeah.
But he needs more volume to be consistent. Some of the other rookies from this draft class, do you guys want to pick out a name or two that you think have a chance to emerge next year? The guys that didn't have a lot of opportunity, like James Washington of the Steelers, if Antonio Brown was to leave. Traquan Smith, he had a couple of boom games and then disappeared. Kiki QT was a target hog when he was on the field, which was almost never.
The guy that I would throw out, since we talked about Courtland Sutton and his opportunities, would be Deshaun Hamilton. Deshaun Hamilton has the exact same opportunities that Courtland Sutton has, except if it's true that Emmanuel Sanders isn't back, and Emmanuel Sanders was the primary guy. I mean, you could argue even 2 years ago he was the primary guy over Demaryius Thomas. Deshaun is much more of the Emmanuel Sanders type. That seems to be more of the Case Keenum type. I think Deshaun could outproduce Courtland Sutton next year, and he'll certainly be much cheaper in your draft.
Case Keenum's type is the closest player to the line of scrimmage.
Right.
So, yeah, generally, that's going to be Deshaun Hamilton over Courtland Sutton. That'll be a tough pick for me. I like Michael Gallup. I think Michael Gallup showed me a lot over various weeks, especially, even moving into the playoffs and what you saw Dak being able to get him the ball. 500-plus yards, only a couple touchdowns, but I think Michael Gallup has a real opportunity to carve out that number 2 role, which when you play on a team with Amari Cooper, Cooper's going to disappear a couple games every year. So
Michael Crabtree is pretty good.
Yeah, I think Gallup is very interesting in terms of earning the trust of Dak Prescott. Mike, do you have a name that you want to pick out?
Kiki is very interesting to me. Just the absolute target domination when he played, but his health is highly questionable at best.
All right, let's go ahead and take a couple minutes for Foot Clan Mailbag before we shut down the show.
Mailbag.
All right, if you have a question, go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com, or you can dial our voicemail hotline, 302-464-TFFB. Here's a question about, Hunter Henry. Tyler in Buffalo says, hey, Ballers, there's one player you did not touch on in your Truth episodes. because there was no truth to him this season. But going into next year with the abysmal tight end landscape, what is the truth about Hunter Henry? The truth is we were all very, very disappointed to have to report the news last year that he was going to miss the season. We were all very excited to see what he could do, stepping out of the shadow of Antonio Gates, a shadow that has grown larger in recent years.
However, no, that's great. That was a great joke.
Thank you.
He looks like twice the man he used to be.
And I'm twice the man I used to be.
Look, Hunter Henry is absolutely worthy of top 10 tight end consideration.
Absolutely, he's top 10.
100%. He is. Once you take out the primary target tight ends, like the ones that are the primary target in their offense, maybe Kittle is a primary target on his offense, definitely Kelsey. Then it's like, okay, everyone else is going to have bad games or they disappear. Hunter Henry will as well. But he's going to be involved enough, talented enough, and on a good enough offense where he'll be the tight end 6 or 7.
Here's the thing that I want to contextualize with Hunter Henry, and I think he fits into the Trey Burton hype category, where you kind of see the path and you think he's going to have the great opportunity, but Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Melvin Gordon out of the backfield, Austin Eckler out of the backfield, and both of you guys have thrown a lot of shade on Phillip Rivers next year for whatever reason. So I feel like you guys have.
I have.
You guys
okay,
have.
maybe him. I was like, I still like.
Well, you said you'd take Baker over him.
Yeah, for ceiling.
All right.
Because Phillip Rivers will still be in that 12 range.
Phillip Rivers' ceiling it's still pretty nice. It's still pretty nice. But regardless, I'm just saying, like, it's easy for us to get hyped about the next tier of tight end. I'm not saying Hunter can't deliver, but I'm with you, Jay. I think 8 to 12 is a more reasonable expectation for Hunter Henry.
Yeah, sure. I think in that 8 range, he'll definitely be a top 12 guy because it doesn't take much to actually finish as a top 12 tight end. And, you compare him against Trey Burton, and I would just say the difference there is Trey Burton came over, got the big contract, the system looked great, but Hunter Henry, the player, he was drafted to be a great tight end. He's 6'5", 250 versus 6'3", 235 with Burton. So I think Hunter Henry.
Aren't they all drafted to be great?
Well, I'm saying he cost a lot more.
We expect you to be
Wasn't
average.
Hunter Henry a second-round draft pick?
Yes,
Memory
second
serves.
round, and it's contract year. So
But
if you
he's
buy
not-
into that,
Sure.
Trey
He's
Burton
coming off
was-
an injury, too.
Yeah, but
So-
my point is Hunter Henry was drafted in the second round. Trey Burton was undrafted. So he was coming out of college supposed to be a star.
All right. If I were the commissioner of the NFL, this is a question from Matt in California. If I were the commissioner of
it's
the
a great
NFL,
question.
I would do what?
Oh, I know it.
To make the Pro Bowl watchable. I would do blank to make the Pro Bowl watchable.
I would 100% make it a flag football game. I would take the pads away. I would take the helmets off. I'd watch the players. I'd mic everybody up on a 7-second delay. But I think that would be fun. Watch the actual players, get to see them, get to watch them talk smack and, play, have fun, take a little bit of the injury risk away. I mean, you could still tear your ACL.
I think you add to it.
yeah, that's
No.
I think you might.
I think that
Here's
the
what I would
players
do.
would play all out without pads more so than they would. Like in pads, I feel like it's just nobody's giving it their all.
Keep it the same, but instead of an armband that the quarterback has, he's got a smartphone. Everybody who's watching on TV at home, they vote on 1 of 3 plays on every play. You get to pick the play, let them run the play. A little
That's
bit
not
of
bad.
active participation in the Pro Bowl. That's
Not bad.
That's my guess.
Not bad. I'm with you, Jay, that forever I wanted it to be flag football, but because no, I don't think it'd be boring at all. But I actually think that's the problem is the injury risk will go up because the chance of guys trying to do, and I'm talking the skill players, going for super fancy, like real hard cuts, real strong juke moves. They're not trying to juke anybody. And when they're
Did you guys go watch the American Flag Football League and Chad Johnson?
They're not trying to juke anybody when they're in pads.
Not in the Pro Bowl.
Sure, they are.
Not like they
not
would in
having
flag.
pads off does not mean they're going to try to cut harder. I don't buy it.
All
Now,
right.
if they get shoved down or hit in the air, then sure, they're at more of a risk without the pads. But you can't hit them at all
James
if it's flaglet.
James in Texas has a dynasty question. He's about to start a dynasty league for the first time. Was wondering what is the appropriate amount of bench spots to have.
So the total amount of spots, I'll just give you the over arc. I like to have 30 players per team, and then the starting roster be quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, and then 2 flex.
Yeah, and one of those would be your super flex.
Yeah, and if you want to go with a super flex, I fully support that as well.
And the remaining on the bench.
Absolutely.
All right.
Pristine deal of the day.
Oh, well, this is just perfect, isn't it? Nick Chubb, a signed Cleveland Browns logo football, yesterday sold for $54.99,
Oof, that's
which is very,
1
very
cent
close.
away.
Oh, that is.
I'd paid the extra penny just to get it right on the dot. Pristine Auction. There's a Kenny Galladay jersey, brand new, up on our wall today that we got from Pristine Auction.
Yeah, I've been hitting up Pristine a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed. I checked.
That's right.
Here's
I
the
checked
thing.
the credit card statements, Mike.
Here's the thing, Foot Clan. If you
Business expense.
if you want to win these things, now is the time.
Yep.
To
Snag 'em.
really take
Well,
advantage.
To be
of,
fair, not if you want Patrick Mahomes gear or Julian Edelman gear.
That's tougher.
Good luck.
but everyone else, now is the time. So head on over to Pristine Auction, make a completely free account. Make sure when you do it that you let them know that you found out about them from the Fantasy Footballers podcast.
All right, we'll be back with some more rookie review on Thursday, some fantasy Valentines, and a whole lot more. No tats and flaps, though, I promise.
Yeah, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.